Okay, hey, everyone. Welcome back to part 5 of 4, a BL podcast where we talk about everything BL from filmmaking to narratives, tropes, sometimes sex, even. And honestly, who knows what else? It really just depends on how we're flowing. Got an unpopular opinion? We probably do too. Saying everything you do or don't want to hear about BL, this is part 5 of 4. And I am Day, one of your hosts. And then my co-host is...
I'm Senna.
Today we are talking about our top 5 BLs since last episode was our only Friends episode. And it got a little spicy, didn't it?
It did. And it did feel important after spending an hour and a half talking about all the things that I felt Only Friends did wrong to counterbalance that with but also I do like things. I am capable of enjoying media and not just sitting there bitterly staring at it, smoking a cigarette out the window and staring into the middle distance.
Yeah, we do like things, I promise. We actually like quite a lot of things.
We do.
And we are going to talk about them today. And Senna, do you wanna go first?
Hell yeah, I will happily go first. Okay, so right off the top, I will say for both of us, these are in no particular order. So it's not necessarily a ranking of most liked to slightly less liked. These are just as we feel like talking about them. So the first one on my list is I Told Sunset About You. It is from 2020, starring PP Crit and Billiken. So to give a very high-level overview of what it's about, it is about two friends who kind of grew up together and were friends as kids, had a big falling out when they were young, and are now coming back together as they're getting ready to go to college. They are kind of both aiming to go to the same program at the same university, and it's all about the kind of making up and the falling in love and the agonies of kind of making that first transition into adulthood and all of that fun kind of coming of age stuff. What do I love about Itse, we'll say, because it's a long name. When I was first getting into BL, there were a couple shows that were recommended to me really quickly. So it was Bad Buddy got recommended to me really quickly, Until We Meet Again got recommended to me really quickly, and a couple people had mentioned it. I Told Sunset About You, and I just kind of didn't get around to it until a little bit later. Then I watched the pilot, and then I watched the whole show in, I think, one day when I was on vacation. What do I love about this show? Now I feel like all of a sudden I've never had an opinion in my life.
No, you're doing great. You're doing great.
Okay, good. So what I really love about this show is that it is one of the most visually striking BLs that I've ever watched. It's like the colors are beautiful, the cinematography is really gorgeous. It's very lush, right? Like they do great things with really saturated colors and really almost putting a tinge of nostalgia over it for me. And maybe that's just because I'm very far away from going to college for the first time. But that's kind of how it hit for me. I really love that it's can be pretty spare with dialogue. There's a lot of acting that's just these two main characters being in the same space, the way they look at each other, the way they talk to each other, or the way they look at each other, the way they touch each other, rather. The way they're aware of the other's presence whenever they're in the same room. I think for my money, if you're looking at my ideal agonies of first love BL is I Told Sunset About You. I think it is one of the best depictions, and not just in BL, but in any media I've ever watched of the agony of that first love, where it's the first time you have ever really truly deeply wanted someone, and it's the most intense thing you've ever felt, and you don't know what to do about it, and you don't know how to handle it. So yeah, that is my first pick.
And what you guys are quickly going to notice is that Senna's choices are very academic-ish. Like you could tell, Senna's got thoughts. And meanwhile, me, I got vibes. And my answers are, super basic bitch answers. So forgive me for my first one, which is Kin Porsche, because of freaking course it's Kin Porsche. So Kin Porsche, I feel like it's one of those that doesn't need too much of an introduction if you are familiar overall with BL shows of the last 5-10 years. If you are not, it is basically if Martin Scorsese made a gay mafia show with obviously much less budget. But you know what? He could do it. He should actually. That should be his next movie. with Leonardo DiCaprio, I guess, because that's the timeline we're stuck in. If there's a Scorsese movie, Leo is in it. Anyway, but Ken Porsche is the story of two characters, Ken and Porsche. And Porsche, being a poor like the rest of us out here, he gets hired as a bodyguard for a mafia kid, a mafia heir.
Quote unquote hired.
And I mean, look, you got to do what you got to do for money. I did retail. Porsche does bodyguarding. He got the better deal out of it because he got a hot eyebrowed mafia heir. So I just got a lot of angry people yelling at me about yarn. So who made it out better? Definitely Porsche. But he joins the mafia family, and what follows is just, I don't want to say adventures. Exactly. I don't think adventures is the right word. A lot of situations. Into the mob life. And he has a younger brother. You meet Ken's cousin, Vegas, who has the only Angelina cheekbones. The rest of the bodyguards, there's lots of up and downs in their relationship. There's the two secondary storylines, and then the overarching storyline, Porsche learning to live within the mafia life, essentially. And, to never trust anybody who wears Mr. Rogers sweaters except for Mr. Rogers. So, but you can watch it on IQ, and it's kind of the BL that kind of like broke the internet for a little bit, I want to say. Like, I would argue it was the biggest BL to come out I believe it came out in 2022.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah, 2022, according to IQ. And I find that moniker to be very earned. I remember when the trailer came out, the original trailer from Filmania. There's a whole Ken Porsche lore. We're not going to get into that today. We're going to save that for the Ken Porsche episode. The original trailer had broke people's minds, and then the new trailer from the new studio had broke even more minds. I think that trailer in and of itself has racked up like almost 8 million views, which is pretty...
It's something ridiculous like that. Like, it's a crazy amount of views.
To go into a minor bit of backstory, like, I have dabbled in BL for many, many years, and I had watched some of the big recommended ones at the time, and then none of them really impressed me or like thoroughly grabbed me by the throat, as it were, until Ken Porsche. Ken Porsche, I feel like, was a very interesting phenomenon, and also something very interesting to experience live. That week-to-week fandom participation was actually something that I hadn't experienced since like more olden fandom days of like when Hannibal used to air, when Supernatural used to air. So that was really interesting, and that was really engaging and fun. That was a fun time for fandom. Like all big fandoms, drama happens, but I don't care about that, nor do I care to talk about it. But for me, Ken Porsche, there's so much that works about it. Like, it's a very high quality show, like the production value, and I don't use this lightly, especially when it comes to BLs. I feel like people tend to overhype what they are, like, as far as the production of their filmmaking goes.
Oh, yeah.
When a lot of them they can't really be filmed up to par to what, like, mainstream audiences are used to, just because of the lack of budget. And that's fine. I'm not knocking that. It's more of Ken Porsche is an outlier because the production value is there. It is very good. Like, this show has actual color grading.
It does have actual color grading.
Yeah,
Magic.
The show had like a post-production time where they actually were able to edit things, they were able to color grade, they were able to like really sit with the project and make it the best that it could be. There's certain scenes in it that are some of my favorite scenes in BL just from a filmmaking perspective. I want to say it's episode 4 with Porsche in the bathroom. It's such a small scene. Oh. I want to say it's not even a full minute long, but between the lighting and the editing and the acting from Oppo, it's a very, very well done scene. It scenes like that make the show stick out for me and make it one of my favorites, alongside like the actual story. Like, it has a story, and I never feel like there's parts that are filler, which is an issue I have typically with like other BLs.
Like, any parts of the story of Ken Porsche that I feel do get a little buck wild kind of come at the end in the way where they read very much like setting up for a second series, which is almost definitely not going to happen given the givens of everything that's happened with one member of that cast. So even those parts where it does get a little buck wild and where there's like a real cliffhanger about family relations, anything like that, it doesn't feel out of place. even if it's kind of at a higher level of like intensity, it still doesn't feel like the kind of pointless shock value twist that you see in other shows. It makes sense
Yeah, I
within the
find it to be a
story.
very competent and coherent show. And again, we won't get too into the weeds or anything, but for me, like, I'm a big fan of costuming in film. And Kim Porsche was one of the few shows where I felt like there was very purposeful costuming. I'm not trying to knock anybody that loves t-shirts, but like a lot of the costuming talk I find in fandom is less about it is less rooted in the reality of costuming and how costuming in film works, because a lot of shows just don't have the budget for like actual costumes, which is why you see a lot of shirts and BLs like repeated, because it's their fast fashion t-shirts is what they are. And with Ken Porsche, there's very subtle things in the costuming, like the bodyguards all wear the same uniform, but if you pay attention, they all wear it very differently. And it's those little touches to the costuming that make the show just really cool to me. Like, it's that's an example of one of the reasons why Kin Porsche is one of my favorite shows as far as BL goes. Okay, I've talked enough.
I was gonna say it has a really strong visual aesthetic on all levels, and that's what makes it so like enjoyable just to watch, just in terms of like taking images into your eyeballs. Like, it is very enjoyable just to see the show without even thinking about like what people are saying or what's happening. It's just
Kin's,
a pleasure to watch.
Like ombre suits. Oh,
I love that suit so
peak,
much.
fucking peak. So okay, so that's my first choice. Senna, on to you.
All right. Hell yeah. Okay. So my second choice is I Feel You Linger in the Air, which is from, it's a new one. It aired last year in 2023. Brief synopsis. I Feel You Linger in the Air is about a guy named Jom, who is an architect that's working on the renovation of this historic house. He has a long distance, long term partner that he's kind of been waiting to come home to him. He moved to this more rural place in order to be with him. Boyfriend comes back and is like, actually, I fell in love with someone else while I was studying in England, I think, and also we're gonna have a baby, so we gotta break up. Which is a lot for a pilot. So heartbroken, Jom like ends up accidentally, quote unquote accidentally, anyways, driving his car off of a bridge, and instead of like getting smushed by the water, he wakes up in 1920s Chiang Mai. So it is one of those time travel stories. And in 1920s Chiang Mai, he ends up becoming a servant for a wealthy family that are all mixed up in the politics of the day. And he ends up becoming very close with the son of this family, who is named Yai. What's funny, again, about I Feel You Linger in the Air is that, so I have certain friends in BLs where, like, there are one or two shows where our interests overlap, and then everything else is different. So in some ways, we use each other as anti-recs. So if I say, yeah, I really loved Playboy, they're going to go, great, I will not watch that one. I really loved whatever, and I'll be like, fantastic, gonna skip that, and it works really well. So I Feel You Linger in the Air was one of those shows where the couple of friends really liked it, so I just just wasn't interested. And then again, I finally ended up watching the first episode and was like, oh, this is really interesting. What I love about this show is that it's essentially a period piece, and it's a really gorgeous period piece. Like, the costumes are really beautiful, the locations are really beautiful, and one of the things that I think makes this show really stick out for me is that the supporting cast is extremely well developed and have their own lives and their own stories, and it doesn't just revolve around like the main couple. Not that there's anything wrong with the show revolving around its main characters, right? Like, that makes sense. But I think it's fairly uncommon in BLs, you know, especially with kind of like college stories or university stories or office stories, for the supporting cast to feel pretty hollow. You know, there's not a ton of depth there. They exist very much just to support the main characters, and that's fine
until it's boring. Because that's my exact issue with 1,000 Stars. So to hear this about this show that I have not watched yet, but is on the list.
Yes,
it's on the list specifically
it's so good.
because you recommended it to me, actually.
Oh, I'm so touched. So like, not only is there the main couple, there's also there's lesbians in there as well. There are multiple women that actually have like significant parts and stories and aren't just kind of being fag hags, if we'll pardon the phrase. And it ends up having a lot of really beautiful and interesting things to say about like classism and existing in this particular time period where a lot was changing in Thailand. It has a lot to say about colonialism and non-Thai colonizer people, how they had their hands in the politics and the shaping of what was happening. What I love about the show is that it has something to say on like all of those levels, right? So it's talking about change and what it means to be a servant who falls in love with your master, what it means when your life is less your own than it should be, when you're constrained by where you were born or what you were born into and how you make a life within it, which are always things that I love when shows explore. By and large, and you know this about me, I prefer my BLs to be on the higher heat side of things, right? I like a spicy scene. I like things to be a little hot and heavy. The only reason Playboy isn't on this list of favorite BLs is because it's not technically finished airing, and I did not feel like it was ethically responsible to include a show that's not done airing on my list. But with I Feel You Linger in the Air, it's not super high heat. Like, there's kissing scenes, there's one or two sex scenes, but rather than them being kind of more typically high heat, they're just incredibly sensual. Like the way they're filmed and kind of the delicacy of how they show them, the two characters kind of touching each other, the way they like you kind of see them always constantly being aware of like the other one in this also really interesting way, because one is essentially like I think he's the head of household. I think major domo is how they were translating it in the subtitles I saw. So there's also this element of like Jom's job is to take care of Yai in a lot of very intimate ways, like helping him dress, helping him get ready for things. And I don't want to spoil it, but like the last sex scene that they have, without even really showing anything, is one of like the most captivating depictions, I think, of characters having sex in a really interesting and really cool way. So I know you haven't watched this one, but this one was like a sleeper hit for me. But yes, it's absolutely fantastic, very sensual, and the chemistry between the main two guys is like, it's fucking phenomenal. Like,
that's so
fantastic.
Interesting because like we've talked about how fandom can be a little down on like sex and sex scenes.
Yes,
the idea that sex in film, whether it's a movie or a TV show, is inherently, and this is something even beyond fandom. We've seen this discourse, on freaking Twitter and shit. I'm never, ever, ever going to call it X. I won't. I don't
have the constitution to call it X.
But like, there is this kind of growing sentiment overall that sex inherently is meaningless, or it is pointless, or it's just there for the titillation of it all, which is something that we've both disagreed with. So it's interesting to hear that in I Feel You Linger in the Air, like, sex is used to display intimacy, essentially, between the characters in different ways and to build intimacy. It makes me more excited to watch the show because I like to see how different directors and storytellers use sex in a variety of ways, because that's fascinating, because sex is a part of a lot of people's lives, not everybody's, but a lot of people. And I like to see media reflect that and the different ways they can reflect that, from the most like horny ways, which is like, very like Love in the Air, which that's not a knock. I adore that show. To the more like erotic ways. I would say like sex and the way it's filmed in like Kin Porsche, for example, is very erotic, more so than like smutty.
Oh yeah.
Which again, neutral terminology here. Like, for people listening, like, this is not a condemnation of either way to like film sex and stuff. But yeah, so I find that very interesting about the show.
Yeah, well, I think too sometimes there can be this conflation of like, if you say you enjoy sex scenes in media, a lot of people will take that as like, oh, so you only enjoy like the extremely raunchy, like the extremely explicit sex scenes. And I'm like, no, it's not that at all. I do enjoy those. Like, I think they're fun. I think they can bring a lot to a story. But what I really like at the end of the day is when sex is used to deepen an understanding of characters, or to deepen an understanding of a relationship, or to really tell you something about who these characters are and what they think and what they're doing and where they're at. Like I said, I Feel You Linger in the Air is really very like low explicitness. There's none of the like Only Friends style of like, riding someone in the back of a car, even kind of out there-ness. but it still manages to be like meaningful and it gets like very sensual and sexy at the same time.
Side note, kudos to Boston. Look, if Boston has one fan, it's us, because Nick disregarded that right apparently at the end. Anyway, listen to that episode. So my next pick. This next pick is fueled at least like 80% by nostalgia, for the record, because I guess you could call this a problematic fave and whatnot, because it is about cops. And it's specifically about like NYPD cops. I know, I get it. Again, it's nostalgia. But it's called Fake. It's a manga. And it's by a creator named Sanami Mato. I read this series when I was a teenager, I want to say. Like maybe 13-ish. Maybe? I don't remember exactly. But this was back in the day of when like Animerica and Anime Insider magazines were still being printed. Like this is old.
Yeah, this is like back when you went to Borders. You could tell which manga had sex scenes in them because they were all shrink wrapped.
They still do
so
that.
You can just like drag your finger. I know they do, but like I had completely forgotten Fake existed until you mentioned it, and then I was viscerally shoved back into being 13, praying that my mother wouldn't notice that it was shrink wrapped and ask why, because I also read Fake at that very formative age, and it's so much such nostalgia.
Yes. So Fake is the story about two NYPD cops named Rio and D. And Rio is the new cop on the beat, and basically it's 7 volumes. It's actually very short, and it's basically the story of him falling in love with Dee, and they accidentally acquire a child because that seems to be a trend. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's a pretty simple story. They have different cases. If you like the sign, and if you can tolerate like the copness of the sign, you might like this one. Again, it is a little dated, and there's no fantasy aspect to it. Again, it's pretty straightforward. It is more violent than, because I still have the books, because they spark joy. They spark nostalgic joy. So they're still in my bookcase, and it's much more violent than like most, BL manga, especially at that time that was being printed in English. And for me, what I love about Fake and why Fake is on the list for me is because it was one of the first times I had ever seen the word bisexual actually used. Dee says to Rio, because he thinks Rio's cute and he's hitting on him and shit. And he's like, well, like, are you gay? And Dee's like, no, I'm bisexual. Like, and for a little teenage me, that was really informative. Like, that was really formative. And it's one of the few series where I've seen multiple bisexual characters, because Rio is also bi, and their police captain, who shouldn't be hitting on Rio but does. Again, guys, problematic fave here, all right? But he is also...
It's a different time.
If y'all like Vegas Pete, y'all can get over this. But he is also bisexual, and, Rio and Dee obviously end up together, but, like, the captain ends up with another character, and she's actually amazing. I very, very much loved her. Very active part of the plot, I liked the captain a lot, too, actually, as a character. The child that they accidentally acquire and adopt, their relationship with him is also really fun and good. There's a whole side story with him and his childhood sweetheart. The artwork is... like, good. It's
of the time.
It's well done. There's lots of really well drawn backgrounds. I think the thing I was most impressed with, and if you're an anime fan, you know this, but all the black characters look black and they don't look like horrible minstrel racist stereotypes, which was just so refreshing. Because again, if you watch anime, especially anime from like the 80s and 90s, it's rough. Yeah. It's bad. So Fake doesn't fall into that. And I don't know anything about Sanami, so I don't know this. This is pure speculation. But I have to wonder if she actually spent time in New York. Because the cityscape, the background characters, the secondary characters, it almost feels like Law and Order fanfiction a little bit. Now that I'm thinking about it, it kind of feels like Law and Order fanfic.
No, you're right. You're 100% right. It does feel like Law and Order fanfiction.
So, if that sounds like your bag, I can recommend Fake. The original volumes were printed by Tokyo Pop. Those are no longer available. unless you go on probably like an eBay site. But I know that they reprinted them, so new editions are available. So yeah, for me, I wanted to pick a manga because manga has been a huge part of my fandom life, and the nostalgia of Fake. Just there was an OVA too, and it's like 30-40 minutes long. It's not that good, and then like Gravitation got like a whole 2 seasons, and I hate that story. I will be forever bitter about that. Anyway, moving on.
All right. Fake. Oh god, it's one of the things where I was thinking about Fake, and I was like, oh yeah, how long ago would it have been that I read that? And I was like, 20 years. And I was like, no, more than that, actually. It's probably closer to like 22. And then I had to go like put my head between my knees and ignore the passage of time, right?
There's actually a sequel. Like, the series did continue. Yeah, after
really?
the 7 volumes. I've never been able to find them in print in English. I've only been able to find them in scanlations online. But it's like a handful of... There's like 2 side stories, like... And then there's like an actual continuation of the series. And the artwork got a lot better. So...
Oh, that's good.
But yeah, I don't know if they were ever collected into like any English volumes. I doubt it, but they are out there.
So, my next pick is Bad Buddy from 2021, which honestly, other than Kinforce, is probably like the second most recommended show that I ever encountered. And it's probably only the second most recommended because the people who started with Kinforce aren't really BL fans. Like, of my friends, they just really liked Kinporsh because they liked mafia and crime shit. So they don't really watch any other BLs. So, but yes, Bad Buddy from 2021. Bad Buddy is one of the few GMM TV shows that I unambiguously like, and I think it is kind of GMM TV at the best they have ever done. So what is it about? So Bad Buddy is about these 2 guys who are attending the same university in competing faculties of architecture and engineering, obviously, because everybody majors in architecture, engineering, and BLs. They grew up together. They lived in houses that were next door to each other. Their parents had some mysterious feud based on stealing business and poaching employees, and they grew up being raised to pretty much just hate the shit out of each other, to constantly be competing, to always be having to one-up the other. Then something, without spoiling, happened in high school that led to one of them being sent to a boarding school, and the show is about them meeting up again now that they're in college, and how their relationship changes as they kind of get to know each other again, and hidden feelings and hidden secrets are slowly revealed. So what's so funny to me about Bad Buddy is that in many ways on paper, it includes a lot of things that I don't particularly like in media most of the time. So like I don't really watch a lot of like stuff set in school, whether that's university or college. Like it was so long ago for me, and I'm just not super interested in that anymore. But this is one that's set in university. I often don't love like miscommunication as kind of a theme. It's just not super into it. I think I've said this to you before, is that for me with BLs, I'm always trying to find the shows that are about adults, and sometimes those can be very thin on the ground. And this is very much kind of a coming of age show. That being said, what does make Bad Buddy so good? I think honestly, at the end of the day, everything else aside, it is the absolutely phenomenal chemistry between the leads, Ohm and Nanon, and there's a whole bunch of like real life drama and things that happened there. We're not going to get into it. We're just going to focus on the show. But they had absolutely bonkers chemistry. So I know we've talked a lot about how like GMM TV sets shows on the roof just so they can pretend they have an extra set. So like they'll shoot inside the building and then on top, so it's two different sets. And it's one of the roofs that will pop up a whole bunch of times in different GMM TV shows. It's almost as common as like the eye of Deutsche Bank looking over that
one balcony
hot tub. The one hot tub on the one balcony that has seen just so much happen. So much has happened in that hot tub. But yeah, they had such good chemistry, and I don't know, yeah, they just really sold it. Other than that, what I like about it too is that for a kind of coming of age, falling in love story, it has some kind of different beats than you would expect. They don't really have, especially in GMMTV, you'll have the like get together, misunderstanding, break up, get back together. They don't follow those beats. A lot of the issues that they're dealing with are external. They're coming from their families, they're coming from their faculties, but them as a couple end up being really solid once they are together, and I really enjoyed that. It also, again, has lesbians, which is always going to be a plus for me. And I actually really like the ending. I don't want to get into too many spoilers because I know you haven't watched it. I think a lot of people in the West particularly sometimes struggle with any kind of like sacrificing for the larger family stuff that happens in BLs, because the West by and large has a very different relationship with family and, you know, what cutting people off, not cutting people off, the responsibilities you have towards your elders, that kind of thing. And I really like how they thread the needle of that with the ending of the show without giving too many spoilers. It's very much sometimes the only way to win the game is by not playing, and that's very unique, I find, in a lot of shows that are similar to this one that I really, really liked. And also, one of the best viewing experiences in BLs is to watch someone else watch episode 12 for the first time. Like, that is one of the most enjoyable experiences, is to kind of sit there and watch someone go through so many stages of grief and everything that happens emotionally watching episode 12.
Yeah, that's honestly the only reason I'm going to give Bad Buddy a shot is because you and like our group of friends has recommended it to me, and I trust y'all. Because on paper Bad Buddy is not my thing. Like, I am like you. I don't really... I won't watch anything in high school. Like, okay, I don't want to be a hypocrite. I am watching Love for Love's Sake right now, which is technically set in high school. Everybody's like 18, 19. I don't know how Korean high school works. But the subtitles say they're in high school. But I'm doing that because it's transmigration. Okay. And I freaking love that trope. I didn't put Scum Villain on here as one of my faves, but it is, in fact, one of my faves. Yeah, for me, like, University is as far as I'll go, and even then, it's like, it's low. Mm-hmm. It's low on my tier of interests as far as shows go. And GMTV, for the longest time, set so many of their shows, and it's just... I find them all very samey and boring. Not even just at a narrative level, but in a filmmaking level. Like, they all look very much the same. And it's like, it's like the MCU, but with University instead, you know? Like, they all look like they just live in the same universe. But I have heard such good things about Bad Buddy. And if it's going to make fans send trucks to the studio when the two actors aren't going to be in a BL anymore, that chemistry best be fire. Like, that chemistry best be, like, fucking peak. And that's what's making me excited to watch it. Like, I want to see this chemistry. Yeah. And so, yeah, I am going to give Bad Buddy a shot. Like, it is saved on the YouTube playlist for watch later, so I don't forget about it. I'm just really slow. Okay. So, but, yeah. No, that's fair. I am excited. It is on the list.
Yes. I will also say it's kind of like a corollary honorary mention here is I didn't want to put two shows from the actual same creator on this list just to give it a little bit more variety. But Moonlight Chicken, which is directed by the same person, is another one of the GMM TV shows that I also really love for a lot of the same reasons. It has really interesting relationships and less kind of fairy tale ending, a little bit more an ending of people figuring out how to work with what they've got. So honorary mention to Moonlight Chicken, whose largest failing is trying to convince me that Earth is almost 40, who was like 28 when they were filming the show. That's the largest crime, and I can live with that.
I need them, like, if they're just gonna continue to try to convince me that Earth is 40 and Papang is also 40, like, give me GMTV's version of Old Men Yowie at this point.
And here, just as a small corollary to that, what's very funny to me is that, like, I believe Earth and Papang are both, like, early 30s at the most, but, like, Off from Not Me is also in his 30s, but he's still playing, like, university students. It's very funny to me how they decide, like, which face is, like, giving old man. Like,
neither.
Who has, like, the plausible weariness to be an old man?
Neither of them do. None of them do. Their skin is so smooth. Like... They all look great.
Right.
All right. They all look like they're in their late 20s, early 30s. None of them. Oh my gosh. Anyway.
Drop the skincare routine.
Honestly.
Uncle Jim. We want
like,
to know.
I need them to cast Earth as like Channing Tatum. Like, make him Channing Tatum. Like, let him be funny. He's so funny. Like, I've seen clips of him in more comedic roles from like his earlier days, and I'm like, look at him go.
I still so strongly feel that Mick should get to be like a succubus or something intense and dark, because he's got like such a compelling face, and I think he should have the chance to do something more than like slice of life. He really should. That's my opinion, and I stand by it.
I stand with you on that line. Like, because I would love to see Mick should be the GMTV harem boy instead of Book. I said what I said. I said what I said. Okay, so my next choice is, oh god, it's such a basic bitch answer, but you know, I have to be true to my spirit, and it's MDZS, or if you guys know The Untamed, it's, you know, the novel of The Untamed, Grandmaster of Demonic Cultivation is the English title. I feel like it's another one, again, my list is such vibes. But it's kind of another one that doesn't really need like an introduction, because it's, I mean, The Untamed is huge, and Grandmaster is also huge, right? The novels, when they were printed in English by Seven Seas, were New York Times bestsellers. And can you imagine like explaining to someone like, I don't know, some grandma or like grandpa, like in Pop's just like, yeah, what's this all about? Like, he's looking at the newspaper and looking at the New York Times bestseller top 10 and stuff, and you know, he's just like, Kyle, what's this one about? Like, this one of your Pokemans? Like, and poor Kyle's gotta hide like the AO3 porn on his desktop and stuff. Good for you, Kyle.
We all suffer, Kyle.
But for those of you who might not know, it's a Danmei novel, and written by an author named MXTX, and it takes place in a cultivation society, which is like a magical sword. Like, it's not magic, it's fantasy based. There is a more technical term for it. I will link that in the resources, in the episode description, because I don't want to butcher these terms. But it's, if you've ever seen any sort of like epic Chinese fantasy TV show, like, it's kind of adjacent to Love Between Fairy and Devil, or Word of Honor is also within the same genre. And it's about the main character, he dies. That's not a spoiler. All right, it literally happens on the very first page.
No, it is the first line of the book.
But you know, lo and behold, he comes back. He gets resurrected like years and years later, and he gets recruited essentially to put together a dead body. He basically is building himself a Frankenstein, but for like purposes, not like evil scientist purposes. Also, I should have said Frankenstein's monster. I don't want someone like actualing me.
Well, I'm just sitting here thinking, like, I've never before thought about the plot of those books or that show in those terms, but you're right. It is essentially like, well, guess we gotta go find all the pieces of this extremely angry dead body.
They're just building themselves an angry Frankenstein's monster, and because it's doing, you know, fuck shit all up and down the countryside and stuff, and like, it's evil, it's got evil, every part is just mad. While we're doing this, it's split into two timelines. It has the present timeline, the past timeline, and the past timeline gives you more context on what had happened to the protagonist in his previous life, and also starts to build out like the love story between the two leads. You will never meet a more repressed character than his love interest. Like, you know, there's a reason why he was like, every day means every day, and if you know, you know.
That's what we love about him.
So for me, for because I haven't read a ton of Danmei. I want to, and I have a whole stack in my room of I have Remnants of Filth. I have Husky, and
Remnants of Filth
I've only
great.
read like the first couple chapters, but I'm loving it because I love Meat Bun's work. I read volume 1 of Husky and White Cat. I have 1,000 Autumns to read. So I have a lot of priest books to read. Like, I just got Faraway Wanderers and Guardian. Okay. Guardian's another one that I have the volume 1 of. And then I've read some online. One of my favorites is the Devil Vulnerable Wants to Know, which is another like transmigration-esque meta series that I really love. So I don't think that one's been printed in English yet, unfortunately. I hope Seven Seas picks it up. Okay. Though. It's hilarious. The idea of like the love interest in like a shoujo-esque type novel series, finding out because he's like the secondary love interest or whatever, and he's reading through this and he's like, I wouldn't act this way. What the fuck? He's like, I'm giving up everything for this one girl. What? It's so funny. And then he's like, why does she love her main dude? He's such an asshole. Like, ese pendejo. Like, he's such a dick. And teaching her, like, you deserve better in your life, but also so that I don't die. And it's gay, too, so it's great. Anyway, I picked Grandmaster specifically because, one, it was, like, one of the first ones I read. I think the first one I actually read, like, a whole volume of was Scum Villain. But for this one, it was Heaven's Official Blessing that I read, like, volume 1 of first. But, like, for this one, I love the fact that, like, the protagonists don't actually have, like, an antagonist. And I know people will say who the antagonist is. I disagree with you.
We've talked so much about this.
I disagree that Meng Yao is their antagonist because he very much has nothing to do with them.
He doesn't. And, like, okay, we can't get into it because then we have to talk about, like, Ni Mingjae as a cop, and then it spins out into a whole episode about...
That's going to be one episode. Like, why the Nay
That will be an episode.
Fucking
we'll
cops.
do that later.
Anyway. Finish your thought.
I only read... So I did not know that The Untamed was an adaptation. It was actually another show that, like, friends had kind of recommended to me. They called it Chinese Pyramid Scheme for some reason. So I only knew it as the show. And all I knew about it was that, like, the impression I had gotten from the way people talked about it is that it was more like Western smarm shows where, like, they didn't go there with the gayness, but, like, there's a lot of, like, wink wink nudge nudge. So that's the impression I had. And it wasn't until you and another friend kind of recommended the Danmei to me that I was like, oh, it's actually the opposite. The Danmei is extremely explicitly gay, and then for very complicated censorship reasons in China, the show itself cannot be explicitly gay. And it's just a good story. Like, I mean, that sounds so, like, Milk with Toast. In theory, all of these should be good stories. But it's just, like, a really fun story if you like fantasy type stuff. And like you said, it's not, like, fantasy magic in the same way in the West. But, like, if you like Lord of the Rings, if you like any of those kind of stories, this is, like, a great place to start if you want to start reading stuff outside of the West.
Yeah, like, if you liked, like, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is kind of a comparable. Though that film is way more depressing. Well, then again, I don't know. There's some depressing shit in Grandmaster. Some of those backstories, it's like, goddamn. But yeah, like, for me, it's like, I love Ming Yao. I think he's one of my favorite fictional characters because he's so interesting and complicated. And, like, if the book has an actual antagonist, to me, it's society. It's the societal structure that these characters are living under. And that was probably the most interesting thing to me. And I've read a lot of, I've read MXTX's work. I've read Heaven's Official Blessing. I'm not finished, but I have read it, like the first 2 volumes. I've read all of Scum Villain, which I think is great meta commentary on, like, the art of creation as a creator.
Yes.
You know, and for me, Grandmasters just has themes that really stick. I love essentially talking about, you know, society and how it fails people and how classism, like, and the cycle of violence, not just physical, but, like, emotional and mental violence it inflicts on people. I find that very fascinating. Those are the things that I like the most, and how society will make villains and rewrite history so that they're not the ones in the wrong. So nobody has to self-reflect. And that's what I like about the novel and why I didn't pick the show, because I don't feel like the show goes that far. And I feel like the show becomes much more binary in its depiction of, like, good versus evil. And I didn't like that.
I think the show also reels in a lot of, like, the worst qualities of a couple different characters to make them a lot more palatable. And I think it makes the relationships around those characters much less compelling because they're watered down.
Yes. So it's, I want to say it's like 7 volumes in total from...
I think it's 5.
Yeah, that sounds
yeah,
closer.
It's 5, and then the 5th one is actually mostly the extra stories, which are phenomenal.
Yes, you should read them. Don't let fandom tell you that they don't exist. They're all available on 7 Seas. So I definitely recommend them. I think they're great. So that was my next pick.
Sorry, one additional note about this one. It's also incredibly funny in, like, very unexpected ways. So like when I was reading it, I was just like taking screen caps of like things that were making me laugh to send to you and a couple other friends. And one, the art that comes with the Seven Seas version is absolutely great. Two, it is also the funniest confession of love in anything that I've ever read.
Yes.
And sometimes I will just think about the eventual confession of love and just cackle to myself because it is the funniest thing that I've ever read in my entire life.
It is hilarious. There's also many animatics on YouTube with it, and they're all phenomenal. So support your creators,
and
guys.
if you like the Danmei, there's stuff to enjoy in the Untamed. Like, it's cast very well. There are moments that are really good. The pacing is for shit, but like if you like it, it's well worth watching if you kind of just want to spend more time with these characters.
And the wigs are great.
And the wigs are great. Okay. What else? What are we doing? Okay, right. My next thing. Okay, so my next choice is Kiseki, Dear to Me, which is another recent one from 2023. I believe it is a Taiwanese.
It is Taiwanese.
Taiwanese, okay. Make sure I wasn't making that up. So Kiseki, Dear to Me, there's so much that happens in this show. On its base level, it is about a high school student who ends up housing a member of the mafia for a lot of reasons why that happens. It doesn't matter. The point is that he kind of ends up housing that guy, and it is about them kind of falling in love. And then it also has a really fantastic secondary pairing of two other members of this like organized crime family that were raised together by the current head of this organized crime. It also has like Old Man Yaoi.
Like legit.
Like truly Old Man Yaoi.
They're actually in their 50s.
They actually are. Oh, man. So, okay. What do I love about Kiseki? One of the things I enjoy overall about, like, Taiwanese BLs is that not a single second of screen time in any Taiwanese BL is ever wasted, because their episodes are 22 minutes long, and you get between, like, 6 and 12 of them. So there's no time for filler. Like, we've talked about how Thai BLs, I think, often feel overly long, where like 12, 45-minute long, hour-long episodes is just too much. And Kiseki is the exact opposite of that. There is no filler in any single moment of this show. In fact, if you lay out the amount of things that happen in this show, you are kind of like, how do you fit all of that shit into like... like, what does it come, like 4 hours, like a little more than 4 hours of screen time, like the length of one Lord of the Rings extended edition. So Kiseki was one of the ones started airing once I was kind of paying attention to BL. So I was also, I think it was probably the first one alongside Only Friends that I was watching live as it aired. And it was always available to watch, like, early in the morning for me. So for a while, I was just rolling over on Tuesdays, I think, when it came out, before work. And then I would watch the whole Kiseki, and then I would get out of bed to go to work. So, okay, what I love about Kiseki. I love everything about Kiseki, not gonna lie. The cast, absolutely fantastic. The chemistry is banging on every level between the two main couples. There's fucking Old Man Yaoi. I love that. There's like other things I like. There's like kind of shifting like who tops and bottoms in a given relationship. Like, it's not what you would expect. With Chen Yi and ID, the guy that plays ID is just incredibly small, so every 5 seconds he's getting like hoisted up and thrown over someone's shoulder, or like just being carried out of the room like an angry cat.
He does have angry cat energy, and I related so hard.
Yeah, and like the plot is in many ways, if you think about it too hard, kind of ridiculous. So that's why you don't think about the plot too hard. It is very much one of those shows where like the plot was designed to support the emotional beats of the relationships, which I love. Yeah. It's, to me, it's very charmingly, clearly shot on a minimal budget. Like this show is shot with like one person's iPhone filming it and another person's like iPhone camera doing the lighting. Like
2 nickels and a
yeah,
dream.
this show had no budget, and what budget they had went to the 75 layers that ID is wearing of clothing in every single scene that he's in. It's just a really fun show. Like, it has its very serious moments, but like it's a lot of fun to watch. There's a lot of like real care given to the characters to make sure that the emotional beats they get make sense, even if they're kind of based on like kind of outsized, a little bit ridiculous events. I feel like what I really like about it is that it's a story that like honors the shit that happens to characters. Like, there's not any, like, there's one character who ends up with kind of a memory disability, and that isn't something that's just magically fixed. It just becomes part of who he is and the relationship that he has. And it's I don't know, to me it's very much about like the mortifying ordeal of being known, and then you get to the rewards of being loved.
Well, I think you said it best when you said it's charming, because like we've talked about filmmaking a couple times, you know, like we've mentioned how well done like I Told the Sunset About You and Ken Porsche is filmed, and you mentioned how well I Feel You Linger in the Air is filmed. And obviously like filmmaking is important, like at least for me personally, like filmmaking does matter. And I don't study this shit for, well no, I do study it for fun because it's a hobby, but you know, it's not the only thing that matters. Like, I can forgive the fact that Kiseki is basically filmed, you know, entirely on vibes and a dream.
Yes.
Because I love the characters. The characters are very unique.
Yeah.
In artwork, one of the things that we often talk about is silhouettes.
Yes.
So when you're creating like a new character, like one of the things that you're given as an artist as an assignment to practice is creating a character with a strong silhouette. So that way, if they are only in silhouette, like people automatically know who they are. And you see this with like, if you saw a silhouette of Wonder Woman, you're going to know who that is. If you saw a silhouette of like Iron Man or Captain America, you will probably know who that is. That is how I feel like Kiseki works. Like each character has a narrative silhouette. Like not one of the main four are alike in personality. Yeah. You know, and their relationships are not alike either. Like their dynamics are not at all similar, and they still work. They still mesh together. I like that they have chemistry with each other. They feel like friends. And it's just a really charming show. Like I'm able to overlook the fact that like the plot moves at breakneck speed and they don't really explain a lot of things.
No, there's no need.
Because, there's no need. Because, like, you know, there's a whole scene with one of the protagonists telling his love interest's grandfather that basically, like, look, I'm going to marry your grandson whether you like it or not. Like,
nobody asked you, Grandpa.
Like, it's literally that, like, tell your grandpa if he got beef, I'm a vegetarian.
I'm fucking scared of him. Yeah.
And I love that. And that's what, to me, like, Kiseki isn't, out of all the shows that we probably have on the list and such, it's probably one of, like, the lower production value shows. Yeah. But it's one of those things where, like, I would wholeheartedly recommend it just for the fun of it all. Because sometimes it's just fun, like, to watch something that's very charming and sincere, I would say.
And, like, kind of along with what you said, like, the characters in Kiseki are so strong, and the way they're acted is so strong. You feel like you understand these characters very quickly. Some of that there is, because it's such a limited runtime, there is a little bit amount of telling you stuff about characters, not necessarily just showing it. But the characters are so realized, I guess, both with the writing and the way that they're played. So even though we're moving at breakneck speed, even though we have like a time jump and prison sentences and all kinds of shit, there's a bakery, so many elements that if you list them out, you're like, these don't go together. I'm like, but consider that they can.
There were a lot of health code violations at that bakery. But you know what? Good for them. They earned it. Yeah. They earned every
They really did.
Violations.
And kind of what you said about, like, the friendship chemistry, that's also something I really like about this show. I think sometimes in BLs, like, the main couple and then any, like, secondary or tertiary couples feel very disconnected. More like they're parallel stories rather than, like, happening in the same kind of universe. The big one for me I always think of is Until We Meet Again here, where, like, so far as Win and Team know, they're in a sports BL. They have no idea what show they're actually in. And it doesn't feel like that with Kiseki. You can tell why these people like each other as friends. Those relationships are drawn really well. And I think that ends up kind of making the romances even better.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a quick watch, which is sometimes nice if you don't want to watch 12-hour-long episodes.
Yeah, I don't. I'm so lazy. Folks that can watch, like, all, like, 49 BLs as a challenge, more power to you. That is not me.
I guess this is a very minor spoiler just for a line that I think is funny. It does have my favorite, like, burn in all of BLs, which is one of the characters tells the other, like, it's really easy to, like, mix up love and admiration. The other character responds, other than the ability to cook, you don't have any admirable qualities.
I remember that.
Which is just my favorite burn in any BL ever.
Oh, that was so real, too.
Was so
he was really like, nah, what's to admire about you? Been at my house for like 4 weeks and you ain't do nothing. Like,
you require that I feed you and promise that you'll pay me back. And I have a running list of what you've cost me.
I also just love characters that are cat coded, and 2 characters in the show are cat coded in such different ways, which is great.
Yes.
I guess to actually keep Taiwan into the conversation, my next pick was History Trapped. It's technically called History 3 Trapped, but that's a mouthful. I call it History Trapped. Taiwan has a series called History, and they're all different like stories.
Wildly different.
Yes, wildly different in like the narratives, wildly different in like the genres. Like sometimes in the same show. History 4 was wild.
I haven't watched
It's
History
not
4.
on the list. It's honestly, I would recommend it if you just for the scene for when the stepbrother is like, I'm in love with my stepbrother, and he tells his father this.
Okay, I didn't know it was
his
a stepbrother situation. Okay.
That's one of the couples. The other couple is like the other couple's living an office romance, and this second couple is like stepbrothers stalking or whatever. Makes no coherent sense.
Yeah,
but
just normal things.
It's literally one of my favorite scenes in BL, just for the hilarity of it, because dad's like, you can't be together because you're like stepbrothers, and the other dude is like, but I love him, and the dad has a literal heart attack. And when I tell you I was watching this and my soul ascended, like, it was so funny. Like, he was like, Dad, I love him, and he just keels over, and the mom is like, oh my god, call the ambulance.
No, not until he says we can be together. That's amazing. Okay.
Even thinking about it now, like, it's so funny to me.
Oh, man.
That's really the only reason to watch the show. But History Trapped, yeah, is actually like a good show. It did Mafia before Kin Porsche, actually, but this one is like a cop mob boss romance, and then the mob boss reforms at the end. So it doesn't go as hard as Kin Porsche, where they're just like, no, we think mob daddies are sexy. But it's about a cop, an investigator named Xiaofei, and he wants to solve this mystery of this shooting that happened many years ago, because I believe it was his mentor that got shot or died or something like that. And he keeps like hounding this known mob boss named Tang Yi, and Tang Yi's basically like, stop blowing up my phone, like the Lady Gaga Beyonce song. And through the power of circumstance and situations, they fall in love. Because of course they do, but it's very cute, and it's very well done. I also love the second couple, which is between Jack and I can't remember
his name,
but he's itty bitty, but he's also like a little acrobatic apparently. Like apparently the actor is like an actual gymnast or something like that.
Tracks.
I read. Yes, and it has another one of my favorite scenes in BL where the itty bitty tech cop is installing cameras at the mob mansion or whatever, and he's obsessed with muscles.
Yes.
And he's feeling up some other secondary bodyguard who's not important, and Jack sees, and he's like, no, like, I'm wearing a white t-shirt and a leather jacket, like, I got muscles, like,
just
shorty.
full on like wet t-shirt contest, like opening the jacket, like, feel me up, do it.
Yes, and he does, like, little tech shorty does. He like just feels up his titties, and it killed me. I died. I was like, yes, I'm gonna root for you guys. It's so funny. And then they fall into a pool because of more circumstances. I genuinely do like this show. I like the plot. I like the characters. For me, if I had to pick a country, I guess, that makes a lot of the BLs that I vibe with, Taiwan was that for a long time. Yeah. It probably still is. I don't know. My mood changes, but for a long time before Kin Porsche, like, I like Taiwanese BLs because the characters are all so strong.
Yes.
And that's what I would say they do best, is like they do really, really good character work. And even though the secondary characters in History Trapped aren't like amazing, like, or new, they are well done in that regard. Like, they are still likable and they are still relevant. It's one thing for a character to be likable, but they need to be relevant to the plot and story in some way, or at least to like the main characters in some way that's meaningful. I know a lot of people didn't like the ending of Trapped. I didn't mind it. I don't mind open endings. Like, to me, it's still a happy ending because like everybody ended up together, even if like certain people are apart.
Yeah.
And to me, that just opens up fanfic possibilities.
There you go.
Or season 2, like, who knows? It's not filmed with like the most budget, but it's higher budget than like most Taiwanese BLs that I've watched.
The office that they're trying to pretend is a police precinct is still very funny to me, because it's clearly a co-working space.
It's so much
because all of those space. Like police stations that are using Macs for their brand new Macs for their police work.
It's got the spirit. It's a little off, but it's got the spirit. And that's what I like about History Trapped. Like, it's fun, it's charming, it's got a good story. Like, I do like the mystery. I liked seeing how Tangy got into the mafia
Yeah.
and why he joined the mafia and like his previous mentor and how that informs his relationship with Xiaofei.
Yeah.
Like, and all those things, like, you know, I loved little textual recap stories about his grandmother and how important she was to him
Yeah.
and how important food was to him and how food is a love language for
Yes.
him. Not that he can cook, but he loved to eat. And I was like, yo, me too. Like, you know, that's legit. That's relatable.
Yeah.
So I was like, where's my former assassin mercenary person
Who just wants to be your house husband?
Yeah, like, or housewife, whatever. I'm versatile.
If you like kind of like a cat dog dynamic in your pairings, I think that main couple is a really great example of like a little terrier of a human being who just has like the mafia guy's like the hem of his pants in his teeth and he's just like not letting go, and then the mafia guy who's like, what are you doing? Like, you have to stop, man. Like, you are fucking up my vibe. You're showing up to my tailor. Like, you have to calm down.
Everybody was always telling Xiaofei to calm down, and
he will
was
never.
like, I will not. And then he got his man in the end.
Did.
So really, like, that's my next pick was History Channel.
I only watched that one again because of you, and it's so fucking funny.
It's so great.
So funny.
So I think we're on our last one.
I think we are. And then like I have a number of like honorable mentions that probably hit up quickly if you do as well.
I do.
Okay.
I have one honorable mention.
Fantastic.
So take us away.
Fantastic. Okay, so my final choice, and this is the one that I like agonized about really hard, because that's also who I am as a person, as though one could get a failing grade in their favorite shows. That's the thing that can happen. So ultimately, I went with Manner of Death, which is from 2020. So high level, Manner of Death is about a medical examiner doctor who has moved back home to a more provincial area, and he kind of opens up doing an autopsy on a young woman who had kind of collapsed in the middle of a market, and he kind of ends up uncovering this conspiracy that's pointing to like a trail of dead women and machinations that are happening at high levels of power. And the other half of the romantic pairing is involved in organized crime in some interesting ways. He at first seems to be like the most likely suspect for who has committed these murders. It turns out he's not, and the rest of the show is kind of about them teaming up to figure out what is going down in this town and how to stop it. So Manner of Death, I think, in a lot of ways kind of does the same thing Kinporsche does, where instead of feeling like it is intended to be a BL show that is going to primarily include BL tropes and then the kind of crime drama is addressing on top of that, it feels more like a crime show that includes a gay couple at the center of it, which is not to knock like BL tropes at all. I just think it's sort of in the same way that Kinporsche feels a little bit more like a mafia show. It just happens to be the gayest mafia families of all time. So I feel like there's, as I talk about these shows, I'm like, okay, yeah, it's always the chemistry is what will get me. So yeah, what makes this show great? So it's Max and Tull, who have like absolutely like fantastic chemistry, fucking amazing. Is it Tull who retired? I think.
Yeah, Tull retired.
So Tull just recently retired from acting, but they have fantastic chemistry. And if you kind of look at the history of BLs, they were some of the first actors to really inject a lot of heat into BLs. That kind of up to that point, BLs had kind of tended to be very like one kiss at the end, and probably it's obviously there's no tongue, and they were kind of one of the first people, in the show itself was kind of one of the first shows to be like, no, we're going to show that these guys are like into each other. Like when they kiss, they are kissing. There's like hand grabbing, getting on laps. Like these two want to fuck each other. I love that for them. It's also it's a genuinely interesting like mystery too. Like it's well done. It's well put together. There's a couple twists that genuinely I did not fully expect, which I'm usually fairly good at anticipating twists, but Manner of Death got me in a couple places. It has a really great supporting cast. I don't know how to say this exactly. It's very much a show about adults, if that makes sense. Like so much BL is kind of coming of age, right? But like these guys are not coming of age. They're adults. They have careers. They have lives. So them kind of coming together isn't about like learning things about themselves. It's about, are you going to do this with this person? And to me, that's always more interesting, I think, than are they going to get together or not? Because the answer is always that they're going to get together.
They're
always going to get together.
Well, except for some Taiwanese stuff and some Japan stuff.
Well, okay, with some exception.
But if it comes from Thailand, they're always going to get together. Yeah, if it's from
Thailand, they're always going to get together. Yeah, there's also like all kinds of like machinations and plans and fake deaths, and I actually, I don't usually like cops in any show that I watch. It's one of the few cops that I ever like is the inspector that ends up helping them with this, in part because he and the doctor dislike each other so intensely, and that's very funny to me. But yeah, I really love Manner of Death, and it's, to me, it kind of goes alongside another show called Triage, which is harder to find now. I believe it's not streaming anywhere anymore, which sucks because it's a great show. And that one is more about like time loop set in like a hospital setting, but it has kind of the same feel, I would say. Source material for both is written by the same person. Yeah, I really love Manner of Death.
Manner of Death is a good one. Like, I watched Manner of Death first, and then I went back through like Max and Toll's filmography, and I tried watching what's it, Together with You, or whatever their previous show was, and hated that. Could not make it past the second episode. They still gave. No, don't get me wrong. Like, you know, they had their make out and then their sex scene, and I was like, yeah, you guys still give. The chemistry is still there, but I can't do this story. Like, it's real long, it's real boring, it's real slow. So I dropped that because I'm a dropper. Like, if a show doesn't grab me, I just drop it. I don't power through shows unless I'm getting paid to. And I wasn't getting paid to power through that one. But Manner of Death, that was a good one. I've seen people say it's not BL. I don't agree with that assertion.
Yeah.
I would say that it is BL, like, because the core emotional plot is their relationship.
Right. It's sort of, if Manner of Death is not BL, then I don't think Kin Porsche is BL. And I think that's kind of where you get at the point at like, what's the difference between what's thought of as like a very BL trope show that has whatever setting on top of it versus shows where the setting is kind of more the motivator of what happens to the characters who happen to be like BL couples, if that makes sense.
Yes, I think it does. And I think that's something that we want to discuss in another episode too. Like, is Manner of Death BL? And the answer for us would be yes. But, like, diving into what that means, I think will probably be a follow-up that we get into more deeply. But, yeah, no, wholeheartedly, especially since it's Toll's last show, assumedly. Like, I think he filmed, like, a couple minor parts for some other shows that are just, like, dramas and such, like miniseries. But other than that, it looks like he's going into real estate.
Going into real estate.
And gonna be, honestly, he'll probably make more money.
Except for when he still shows up to do photo shoots with Max, which I think is very funny. So, you know.
Yeah, Max and Mew. Yeah, that was a fun interview to read with him and Mew. Like, just the bit where Mew's like, I bought him this really expensive bag and he doesn't wear it.
That was very funny.
And Toll's like, I totally wear it. What are you talking about? And Mew's just like, he'll send me pictures of things he wants me to buy and then he doesn't wear them. And I was
it's like, very Z and Nunu of them.
Yes.
So I would kind of say, if you are interested in trying to get people in your life who don't watch BLs, but maybe like Law and Order or Criminal Minds or any of those, if you wanted to kind of ease them into BLs, I would say Manner of Death is a really good kind of bridge series where you don't have to have a lot of knowledge of like BL tropes or anything like that for it to make sense, but it still is kind of introducing you to the genre a little bit. Yeah, that was my last one.
All great choices. I've seen 2 of the ones on Senna's list. I will see, or no, 3, because I've seen I Told Sunset About You. And I will watch the other 2. I will watch Bad Buddy, and I Feel You Linger in the Air eventually. I'm not putting a deadline on that, so no one can hold me accountable. Anyway, my last one is Semantic Error. And I'm cheating a little bit because I am recommending both the show and the webtoon. I like the show more. I haven't actually finished reading the webtoon. So basically, the story of Semantic Error is set in college, which typically I don't do college stories, but this one is filmed really well for what is very obviously a smaller budget, but is about a university student named Chu Sang-woo. And he does a group project by himself, and he's like, you know what? No, not this time, honey. Like, no one else helped me on this goddamn project, so no one else's name is going on this goddamn project. But like, and I was like, you know what? That's like the thing that we all wanted to do when we were assigned group projects and no one else helped.
I have to respect
like,
it.
Living out the literal dream. So one of the people he left off of this group project was a senior, like, so he was older, named Jang Jae Young. And it's basically, I hate to say enemies to lovers, because enemies I feel like is more for like, you know, when you actually have life or death circumstances. And this isn't. So I guess soft enemies to lovers, because Jae Young is mad because now his graduation is all messed up because he doesn't have the project on his, you know, he didn't fulfill that credit, essentially. I don't understand how Korean colleges work. I am no expert. Flow with me here. But basically, he starts bothering Sang-woo, like, to pieces. I mean, one of my favorite scenes is where he's like, you know, what's your
least favorite color?
Drink, and what's your least favorite? And then he shows up in full red. I was like, the dedication to being petty, to being a little petty bitch. Like, you had to go out to the store and buy this entire red jumpsuit with the red beanie. Like, he was determined. He was like, I'm gonna be a problem. I'm gonna be an annoyance.
What I love about that whole sequence too is like watching the one go through the like his daily routine, which we've seen him do, and it just grows, realizing how much the other has gone out of his way. Time he could have spent like working on this project that he has to do to graduate just to specifically annoy this man as much as possible. Like, he bought all of the man's energy drinks out of the fucking vending machine at the school, even though they're disgusting and he's the only one who likes to drink them. He is showing up early to class to take the seat of the other guy, so he has to sit somewhere else. He's wearing full red just to be a visual agony to him. It is such laser focused pettiness, and it's so funny.
It's so funny. And then, of course, you know, because this is a romance, they fall in love. And what I really love about Semantic Error, because typically I need a little more plot to my shows, and straightforward romances are fine. But in television shows, I find them to be very hard to invest in because it's a thin plot. Like, two people meet, fall in love, they get together. It works better in movies, I found. I actually wish a lot of GMTV shows were condensed in movies, because I think they would work a lot better. And I point out those because those are just so long, and their plots get very thin around, like, episode 7. And for me, Semantic Error sidesteps that, because it's really well paced. Every episode is only like 30 minutes long, so it doesn't feel really long. It feels just like a good length, and it's only 8 episodes.
There is also a movie cut of it too.
Yes, and I haven't watched the movie cut. I've only watched the actual episodes, but I'm sure the movie cut is great because I've seen other movie cuts from other Korean BLs, and they do work really well. And I know people have said that, like, Korean BLs are a little short. I do think certain concepts are really short, like, what was it? The Director Who Buys Me Dinner, since it had, like, a reincarnation soulmates plot, I feel like that could have been longer. But for something like Semantic Error or A New Employee, I feel like 25, 30-minute episodes, 8 episodes long, like, perfect length. So, perfectly paced and very well filmed, in my opinion. They do a lot of really cool visual tricks to enhance the storytelling. And again, you can tell that this is not a show with, like, Kin Porsche's budget even, you know? So there are parts that, like, you know, the sets aren't that great, or it's a little samey, but, like, everybody, I like the costuming for all the characters because it's very streamlined. It's very unique to the characters. You know, everybody has their own silhouette, going back to that. And, like, the two mains have great chemistry, like, some of the best I've probably seen as far as, like, at least Korean BLs, if not, like, just in general. They have just really good chemistry. And they're just fun. Like, it's a fun, short series. It's a series I would definitely recommend to, like, non-BL watchers as just a, like, you like romance K-dramas. This feels like a romance K-drama. It is. It's essentially just a romance K-drama, just a BL. So that was my last choice, was Semantic Error.
I also really love Semantic Error. When we were kind of comparing our list, and I saw that you already had Semantic Error, I was like, well, shit, there goes one off mine. Let me see what else. Let me see what I can replace it with.
That's how I felt when I saw Kiseki on yours, and I was like, well, fuck.
Do we want to do, like, a quick mention of, like, honorary mentions?
Yeah, I only have one, and you have a couple more than me, so
sure,
let me go first, then you can scroll through yours. So mine is an American webtoon called Covenant by a creator named Lysandra Vong. And I don't believe the creator technically qualifies this as their story as a BL, quote unquote, but it is a BL-esque story, I would say. It is about a young exorcist But these are sexy exorcists. I'm not even playing. Samson, she's got abs for days, and she's got tattoos on those abs. And I was shaken. But yeah, they're exorcists. They belong to like this, the sexy exorcist club or
as
whatever.
one does.
As one does. The main character, he gets charged by the angels with finding like this half demon, half human person who ends up being like the love interest, but also their own character too. Lots of action. Like the fight scenes are really great. If you like shonen manga, but you've always wanted it to be more gay, I would recommend Covenant because the fight scenes are really, really good. If you like Constantine, but like you didn't like that the movies weren't gay, I would recommend Covenant. And the side characters are really good, and I know that they are actually printing the first season is coming out in a graphic novel this spring in April. If folks prefer to read comics in a printed format, Volume 1 is coming out this year. If they just want to read it in the scroll format, it is on Webtoon. It's up to 2 seasons now. I think season 3 is coming out soon. But Covenant is one. That's my honorable mention.
I will say when I saw this on your list for a split second, I thought you meant the movie The Covenant, which tracks as a movie that you would like. But I was like, I mean, there's a lot happening in The Covenant. I don't know that I would call it a BL, though. So this Covenant, not to be mistaken for the seminal Sebastian Stan 2000-something witch movie.
Which, I mean, a little tweaking, and it could have been a BL.
It could have been. It truly could have been. So honorable mentions for me are Love in the Air, which is a very controversial show. I think ultimately we're going to do a whole episode about MAME, so I figured it was better to leave all of my very, very many feelings about Love in the Air for that episode. What else? Oh, I think I mentioned Triage already. Also in continuing of like Taiwanese BLs that are really good, The Eighth Sense is fantastic. The Eighth Sense is about a kid who is coming to university for the first time who ends up joining this surfing club and really connecting with a senior on that club who's got like his own brand of like personal, kind of demons in his background and trauma. It's beautifully shot. Like the surfing stuff is especially gorgeous. Acting is beautiful. The relationships are fantastic. And the president of the surf club is like my ideal woman. She's beautiful and I love her overalls and I would die for her. And then there's also like there's a couple shows that are currently airing that I really am liking. So, but like I said, I didn't want to include any of those because they're not finished yet. So The Sign I am really, really enjoying very, very much. It's very good in reincarnation, past lives, mythical creatures kind of way. If you can deal with the cops of it, it's very, very enjoyable. And then also Playboy. I almost just put Playboy on anyways because at this point, even if whatever remaining episodes are not good, I will still love it based on what's shown till now. Pending favorite, we'll say.
So seconding Love in the Air, The Sign, and Playboy as also honorable mentions. I am with Senna. I also love all 3 of those shows. Love in the Air. Yeah, we're going to do a whole MAME episode because just to break all that stuff down.
There's so much.
But shout outs to some of the best chemistry I've seen, just kind of almost in general for that show. And then The Sign. I love fantasy shit. Like, I am a huge fantasy person. It's one of my favorite types of fiction. So The Sign's hitting that button for me really hard. And it's also filmed well. Its production value isn't as high as something like Kin Porsche, but I love the camera work.
And considering how much CGI there is in that show, the CGI is incredibly impressive to me, given the budget level they were working at. It's used very smartly. Yes. That's something I don't expect out of BLs necessarily, is to have good CGI. I don't remember what show it is with the CGI tiger.
Oh, Naughty Babe.
That's always what I'm expecting.
Yeah, which, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I get it. Like, CGI is expensive and CGI is hard. Disney, pay your people. Yeah, for The Sign, they're really, really smart about how they're using their CGI. And the show's ambitious, and that's what I love about it. So, and then Playboy is also super ambitious and super unlike anything else on the market from any country, like, except for, like, maybe Japan. So, I feel like if you like Japanese BLs, you might actually like Playboy.
Also, fun fact about Playboy is that one of the main writers for Playboy also worked on Only Friends. So if you've seen both, there are kind of a lot of interesting comparisons with how similar plot points are handled differently that we will hopefully talk about one day, because I think it's very, very interesting to see the different takes that these shows have on similar events.
I agree, yeah. Were there any other final honorable mentions?
Last honorable mention, which I think we talked about a little bit anyways, is just Word of Honor, which is based on another danmei. The danmei itself is also very good, but Word of Honor, which it's just really fun. Like, I think the pacing of it is better than The Untamed if you're looking at an adaptation of a danmei. And some of, like, the most dramatic bitches in any show that I've ever seen for main characters. There's, like, a whole bunch of, like, hot-ass lesbian ghost things going on.
The show is so much.
There's an acquired child whose name will not stay in my head, so I just call him Feathery Bangs. There's, like, an amethyst ghost who picks up just, like, the most simp man ever, who looks at her and is like, that's what I want for the rest of my life. I'm going to dedicate every single moment of the rest of my existence to following her. The funniest, crankiest old man immortal ever in the whole world. There's a guy, like King Scorpion, who's got a lot going on. It's hard to talk about him without spoiling it.
Like, you think Tumblr has
Wait till you
issues.
see Scorpion.
No, Scorpion.
You deserve better, Scorpion. You can do better.
You can do better. So you're literally just throughout the whole show with him and his girl gang being
Truly.
like, you can do better.
I will say, with Word of Honor, I do tend to ignore, like, the main plot with getting the glazed armor and, like, all the brothers and that kind of thing. I'm not there for that.
The glazed donut plot matters
does
not
not.
at all. Like, no one cares about the glazed donut. We're all here for the vibes, the costumes, the wigs, and the characters.
Primarily there for, like, Wen Keijing and Zhu Jishu being absolutely ridiculous about each other, but not wanting to admit that they're being ridiculous about each other. Two protagonists have never cared less about the main plot that they're involved in. Like, they don't give a shit about any of this. They just happen to keep running into it, and I respect that about them very much. That they're like, this is not our problem. This is like, why am I being asked to deal with this?
They are very much Nene Leakes is just
Yes.
like, why am I in it? And honestly, it's like the gayest censored show since Xena. Like, if you liked Xena, like,
something I'd meant to mention with, like, The Untamed, like, The Untamed and Word of Honor were kind of like the last two adaptations of danmei that actually came out in China, and then I believe, like, several that had been in progress were then shelved. That is probably in more part due to The Untamed, and that's a wild story that involves Archive of Our Own, and that's a whole fucking thing. Like, that's a whole fucking thing. Mm-hmm. It's a very interesting story, but it's a whole fucking thing. So, both of them, I will say, are kind of treading as close to the line of including the canonical queerness as they possibly could without, like, actively kissing, and I respect that for them, given the limitations they were working with.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So yeah, so that's our top 5 with some honorable mentions thrown in there. Yeah, look at us go. And all these shows that we've mentioned are going to be linked on where you can watch them officially, if there are official links, in the episode description, so that you guys can go out and support them, you know, as we want to do.
Hell yeah.
And we will also probably try to include some fan works too for some of the stuff that we talked about and mentioned, because we love to support the community.
So yeah, that was our personal top 5. If you agree with our top 5, we'd love to hear about it. If you disagree with our top 5, we also would love to hear about it. What do you feel is missing from our lists? Because it's entirely possible neither of us have just watched it yet. So any recommendations that y'all have for stuff that seem up our alley, we would love to hear.
But be nice, because I'm weak.
So yeah, thank you for listening, and we will see you guys next time.